John, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Linch with a Leader. It is an honor to have you.
It's an honor to be here, Mike, and I'm grateful for the space you've provided for me, man. Thank you.
Man, I love people like you who've packed a lot of life into their story. And you've packed a lot of life into your story. Growing up in Texas, take us back a little bit into John's life growing up. When you were growing up, who did you think you were going to be and what did you think you were going to do?
Oh, geez. Dad was a homicide detective and a SWAT hostage negotiator for Houston Police Department. And so he was a bad dude. And he also volunteered with the youth at our church, which was about 700 to 1,000 people, which back then was
big church.
Was huge. And my mom was, just because of the faith community she grew up in, was not allowed to go to school. She was told that women have one singular job and there's no reason to go to school. And so she graduated high school, started working, married my dad, and two major shifts in my childhood. One is about halfway through, so maybe middle schoolish. My dad, the youth minister, left at our church, and they asked him, "Hey, do you want this job?" And he quit over a weekend and took it, almost sight unseen. And I think he would probably come back and tell you, "I don't know about that," but that's what he did, right?
Yep.
And then the second one is my mom, at the age of 42, got up the courage, and my dad had been, championing this for a long time, but she got up the courage to take one community college class down the street from us there in Houston. And then the next semester, she took another one. And the next semester, she took another one. And ultimately, at 57 is when she graduated. I think 57 when she graduated with her PhD. And she became a professor shortly thereafter at a university there in Texas. And then she became the department chair. And at 72, she just stopped being the department chair. So here's the two major takeaways I had in life. One is, when there's a problem, when something's on fire, when somebody's firing a gun, you go in. Your job is to go be a part of a solution, whatever's going on. Whether it's in your community, whether somebody needs you in the middle of the night, you show up. And the second one is, age is nothing. You can change anything at any time. And so when I was, my whole career has been working in education. I was a high school coach and teacher for a few years. And then I've been working in the universities for almost 20 years. And so taking a left turn as my 12-year-old son says, "Dad, you're just a YouTuber now," right? So to take that left turn and start a radio show, to my buddies, were like, "What are you doing?" And for me, it wasn't even it was no concern at all. It's like, this will be fun. And so those two major things have been foundational pillars to how I live my life. And so when you say, like, what do you want to be? I thought I was going to be in the FBI. I thought I was going to be a psychologist. I thought I was going to be a baseball player for most of my life. I ran track in college, so I thought I was going to run. I just had all these lofty ambitions and just kind of followed my nose.
As your parents raised you, and you said you got a 12-year-old at home, as your parents raised you, what did they do most right when it came to your faith piece? I think so many times we look at our parents and we see their faith, but maybe their faith doesn't influence us and we go our own way. But you sort of chose a track and got in that track. How did their faith journey influence yours?
In two profound ways. And of all the interviews I've done in the last few years, no one's ever asked me that question. I think it's a great question. When my dad took the job as pastor at this church we were all going to, we'd been there forever. It was a legacy church. We'd been there for 20 years. He had been there for 20 years up until he took this job. I'll never forget. And I was maybe 10 or 12, something like that. He took me out for lunch or something. And he said, "Now that I am your minister, you're not going to be able to hear me. And so I want you to find other men in this building that you can talk to and that you trust. And if you can't find it here, you can go to any church in our local community and I'll support you." Now, he was an old Church of Christ pastor, which back in the 90s, if you didn't go to a Church of Christ, you were just signing up to burn in hell for eternity, right? That was so I didn't understand what a gift of grace and what a gift of wisdom that was until decades later, to think, oh, he put his job on the line to look at me in the eye and say, "I don't care where you find Jesus. I don't care how you find him, but make sure you find him. And I don't care what building you walk into, find him." and or put yourself in a position to be found is probably a better way to say that. The second one is my mom. So my mom used to, when I was a kid, and again, she has no college education. She's a high school. The big thing back in the 90s, in the late 80s and early 90s, was the New Age movement, right? And there's always a new thing that's going to take over and end faith. And back then it was the New Age movement. So my mom would go to the school board and speak out against things like Madame Langle books, who happens to be a Christian writer, right? But anything to do with, magic or anything like that. She would have been the chief Harry Potter complainant back in the day. And then she ends up going to college, learning, reading new things, having great mentors. And now she is a mythology professor at a very well-known faith-based university. And so what she now does is sits down with 18-year-olds and says, hey, there's 20,000 flood narratives across different cultures. Here's why I wake up here's my favorite quote from her. I said, Mom, there's all these different stories about different saviors throughout time and different Bible stories that we hang on to that show up in other cultures and that have nothing to do with it. Why do you still go to church? And she said, you're not going to like my answer. And I said, well, what is it? And she said, every day I wake up and decide I'm going to believe this. And as a 25-year-old, I was like, that's bullcrap. You got to have science and that. Until I've come to realize I don't know how physics works or a Tesla works. And so I'm just choosing to believe in that too, right? So all that to say is this. Number one, don't stop searching and keep looking for it. And my kids' faith is going to be different than mine. It has to be, because the world they grow up in they got a different cultural frame. And two, don't be afraid of doubt and questions. In fact, seek them out, because if you can't reconcile them, then you have no business saying that's like saying, I don't really know my wife that well, but I'm just going to suck it up and get married anyway. Man, no, get to know your wife. And if something doesn't jive, ask questions and continue to want to know deeply and to ask hard things, have seasons of frustration and doubt. And that's a part of the journey. And those two gifts were really extraordinary.
Yeah, that's powerful. And it plays so much into your story. You even go back to that framework of always run towards the gunfire. And you've really spent your life running towards the gunfire of people's stuff, right?
Yep.
You're not an officer, but you might as well be, because you're
I've
walking
been in some dicey situations before.
That's exactly right.
Where I've even thought I probably shouldn't be here right now. Yeah.
Golly. And you go, and I remember hearing somebody say years ago, we just, our life isn't a compartment, compartments. It's like a bowl of soup, and everything's just sort of thrown in and it's all jumbled up. As you look at who you are today, how important is it for you, and how important is it for others to not only know their past, and this really gets into your book, but to own their past? I think most of us go, well, yeah, that's all in my background, but it really doesn't matter. But you say you not only got to know it, but you got to own it. Why is it so important?
So the big aha moment for me came when I was working to get well, and I was working at a university that just gave everybody a free graduate class every semester. You got to take any class for free. They give you one for credit. And so I started taking graduate counseling classes, one for my students, because they were increasingly coming to me with mental health challenges. And two, I want to know what happened to me. I want to know what happened to my wife and my marriage and my friends' marriages that were dissolving. I just want to know what was going on. And as I got deeper and deeper down a rabbit hole into the trauma literature, and so this isn't woo-woo, and this isn't like spiritual jump up and down and do jumping jacks. This was neuroscience and physiology, that your brain puts a pin, if you will, like a GPS pin, in traumatic moments throughout your life. And it is 24/7, 365 scanning the environment for things that might kill it, that might make tomorrow not possible, right? And so much so that when you're in an anxious situation, smoking will help you. So it knows, hey, cigarettes will make you calm, and this is going to kill us later, but tomorrow will be okay. And so it will even do short-term things to keep you okay in the present that were going to be detrimental to you long-term, right? So when I started realizing, oh man, this, and I'm just going to pick, this isn't my situation, but any kid situation. If you were a child And dad's car driving up the driveway, you knew I'm just going to get real small. I'm going to disappear, or I'm going to just close the door of my room because I don't want to hear it. I don't want to listen. I'm tired and I don't want to say the wrong thing that's going to set dad off, or he comes home in a bad mood. Your body listens for cars up driveways. Your body listens for, oh, that door just opened. And where that's hard is then you get married to somebody and you love being in the room with them, but that car drives up the driveway and you immediately slink into the shadows. And this is our case, right? So on Sunday afternoons, my wife knew, like, that's dad's time. You don't go in the living room. He's on the couch, whatever. And I would come home on Sundays from church and be like, hey, let's watch football and whatever. And she would instantly pull away a little bit, which pulling away for me was a childhood signal of rejection.
Yep.
They don't want to be around you, which then I try to solve with more volume and more energy and like, let's get even closer, to which she responds to, get me away from further. And now our childhood body that's trying to keep us safe, those things that kept us safe when we were kids, are now messing up our relationships in the present. And so the idea that I don't believe that you have to go back and dig through every memory, and you don't have to do that. But you do have to own how your body responds in the present to things it's trying to protect you from in the past. And for most people, that is looking back saying, I love my parents, but man, they screwed this up. Or if I said the wrong thing, mom flew off the handle, and I was responsible for the emotional regulation of the adults in my house. And as a 7-year-old, that was not my job. That was my mom's job, and she didn't do it. And so now I find myself trying to people please my boss. I'm always saying yes to things that I don't have time to do. I've made my life about making sure everybody around me is okay. I got to stop doing that. And that goes back to saying, where did that even come from? That came from here. And I'm going to own that happened to me. And then in the present, I'm going to say, what am I going to do now to begin to heal from that? Because if we don't, man, we're going to pass that on to our kids. And then they're going to be about solving the middle school problems and the high school problems. And they're going to find themselves in a big mess.
And the crazy part is, it doesn't matter what title is on your email signature, and it doesn't matter your age of what you've got. Well, and so I'm 53, so I've gotten to 53. Well, I won't have to deal with that anymore. I'm past 50. I'm past those years. Man, that stuff just doesn't go away. And you did such a great job in the book. You began talking about a pain point in your life when you and your wife had bought a house and you started seeing cracks in the wall. And I'm telling you, man, that was so good, because you began to see cracks. Everybody else told you we're okay, but you couldn't get past that. Talk about that a little bit, because I think every leader has those cracks in some point of their life.
That's right. So one of the most powerful findings I found in the psychological literature of the last 100 years is that when your body detects that there's nobody with you, when you're alone, when you're lonely, and lonely can be proximal, meaning I don't have any people around me, I live out in the woods, or emotional loneliness. And I don't know about you, but I have spent years literally sharing a bed with a woman who I know loves me, and I felt completely alone. Yep. I've sat at a table with leaders who I love, that I'm working with, that I trust, that we're on the same mission together, and I'm completely like, you guys have no idea what's going on inside of me right now. Pastors, coaches, they live this more than anybody. I'm standing up in front of a group of young men or young women, trying to get them rallied up to go run through a brick wall and beat this other team. And they don't know the doubt inside of me. They don't know that my marriage is a mess. They don't know that I haven't seen my kids in 4 weeks and I'm exhausted. Right. So this idea of loneliness, it goes all the way back. So if you and me were, in the woods back with our tribe in, let's say, what city are you in right now?
I'm in Atlanta.
Okay. So we're in Atlanta 2,000 years ago, and you and I and our tribe are camping out in a field, and we all get up and leave, and you wake up and we've left you. You were probably going to die. Someone's going to eat you. You're going to get exposed. You're going to not be able to find food. You're going to get eaten by bugs or whatever. And so your body has a very loud alarm system. The alarms are anxiety. The alarms are OCD. The alarms can even be depression. It will start getting your attention that says, hey, you are all you've got. And you sleep a little bit shallower because you've got to be alert. And when you sleep shallow, then you don't get that deep restorative sleep. And then all of a sudden your body starts to take a nosedive. you start to see things that aren't there.
Mm.
When your body realizes you're alone. So I look around at our current culture right now, and they're coming for us. They're trying to attack us. They're trying to take our way. I'm seeing in big neon letters, we have a culture of people who are completely and totally lonely.
Yep.
And their brains and eyeballs and bodies are seeing threats everywhere because that's how we're designed, but they're not real. And so going back to the cracks, I had the great job. I had my wife and I were making money that my granddad, who just worked at Houston Power and Light, couldn't have wrapped his head around. We've been trying to have kids for 4 years, and it wasn't happening for us. And all of a sudden, Hank comes along, my oldest, and we are cruising. And we buy a new house, and again, I'm in a bunch of debt. I got a bunch of student loan debt. I've got a house note now, and I start seeing like foundation. Like I think the foundation's cracking on me. And I would bring contractors over, I'd bring friends over, and they're like, bro, you're fine. Your house is great. And I was like, oh, y'all don't see it. Right. And then this isolation spiral starts, and not being able to sleep at night which makes my anxiety worse. And now all of a sudden you're in the anxiety spiral that's just so hard to get out of. And I found myself, the book turns on a moment when I called a friend who was a college roommate who I would trust with anybody in my family. He's the executor of my will. And he came down, him and his wife and his new baby came down, and he walked through the house with me, and we stood out on my driveway. And I didn't know that my wife had called him and said, I'm really worried about John. And he said, hey, your house is fine. And I don't want to hear this again. I don't want to have this conversation ever again. Your house is fine. And that was the first time I thought, maybe it's me. You know what I mean? Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm seeing something that's not there.
Why is it so hard to admit that though? Why is it so hard? Because
you see it. You
yeah.
see it. Yeah. You see it. And more importantly, you feel it. So
that's good.
I got to where I remember laughing a few times because my body was responding to things like a settling crack above a door. My body would respond as though somebody was outside with a hatchet trying to break in. And there's a couple times I remember laughing, like, what are you doing? Why is my body spinning up like this? And it had attached like a settling crack in somebody's sidewalk as financial ruin for you and your family. I don't know how it made that gap, probably because it was 2009 or 10. We were coming out of that big mess, but your body will link it up and it will connect stories to other stories. And then all of a sudden you're trying to solve problems that are not the problem, right? We run around and try to solve anxiety. We try to solve OCD. Man, if you will heal your body, it will turn the alarms off, itself.
That's so good. You made a quote in there. You said cracks are a sign, not a cause.
Yeah, man.
That is a powerful statement.
The crack just lets you know your foundation's shifting, or your crack lets you, like, same with anxiety, man. I don't know if I talk about it in this book, maybe in the other one, but all anxiety is like a smoke alarm in your kitchen. That's it. And in our current mental health landscape, whenever we're anxious, we race up there and try to take the batteries out of the smoke detector, or we get up there with a pillow and we duct tape around it. Like we're like making the alarm quieter solves the fire that's burning our house down. Right. And so we got cracks are a sign, my heart beating faster, that warmth in my stomach, my frustration, my anger, my anxiety. Those are just our body's way of getting our attention to, hey, what's really going on here?
I was in a group of leaders yesterday. So I host some spiritual leadership groups of leaders in our community. And one of the guys yesterday was talking about, I try to work between 1 and 3 a.m. when I get my kids to bed, because at work, I am spread so thin and I'm on call and he's in the education world at a very, very high level. And he's like, man, I need to get, and I was telling him about the book. And I said, man, sleep is such a big deal. And I said, John hits this. Yeah. So talk about that a little bit, because I think every leader resonates with, really, I don't sleep that well anymore. I used to sleep like a log, man. I could sleep till 9 or 10 a.m. Now I'd toss and turn all night. Talk about that a little bit, why it's so important to your body.
This comes from the great work. I think everybody should read the book, Why We Sleep by Dr. Matthew Walker. It's a masterpiece. But ultimately, two important things. One, there's been some research that I believe proves causality between a lifetime of a lack of sleep or sleep deficiency and dementia and Alzheimer's.
Mm.
And so we come from the late 80s and 90s, and even before, a flexing, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, like some of the big world leaders, we'll sleep later. Right now we got work to do. And 100% of them end up with some sort of dementia, right? Just that ethos. The second thing that was really convicting for me was none. There is not a single psychiatric illness that does not include disordered sleeping. And we used to think that if you got really anxious or really depressed, that over time it screwed up your sleep. And now what the research is suggesting that's flipped. You stop sleeping, you stop getting all of your deep sleep and your REM sleep and your good cycles because we're watching another Netflix series. We're working till 2 a.m. We're going. I got to make this call. I got to do this thing. Now that the kids are in bed, now is when I start my 2-hour clock of just me time. Or my wife and I are going to be intimate for an hour, and then I'm going to go read for a while, and then I'm going to go work out, right? Whatever I got to try to cram into my day. Man, you're not getting that restorative sleep, and very quickly your body starts to go, hey, we're not okay. We're not okay. We're not okay. We're not okay. And it's going to start trying to get your attention. And basically the wheels start falling off the car. And so 100% workout programs. I want to get back in shape. I want to fix my marriage. I want to heal from depression, anxiety, some of these heavy things. I want to get my career back. Number one on my list 100% of the time is you got to make sleep the number one priority in your life, closely followed by relationships. That's the second one. How did you fix your
sleep? So here you are, hard charging, hard driving guy. How did you get that personally in order?
So I was when I was training in mixed martial arts. So I did that for years, and I would get home from work, and then practice started at 8:00, and we'd basically fight other people until 10:00. Right. And then I'd get home, and then my body's still pretty wound up, even though we're exhausted. It's spun up. So I had a buddy whose wife was a nurse practitioner, and she had this magic pill called Lunesta. And then that was then Ambien, right? And what I've come to learn is those are hypnotics. So the difference is I can hit you in the head with a baseball bat and you'll be unconscious for 8 hours. That is not sleep. And what those things do is they make you unconscious. They don't let you sleep. And so I took those things almost nightly for 7-8 years. And I didn't realize that I was depriving my body of sleep for 7 or 8 years. And so there's no wonder. So first was getting off that nonsense. Second was, how am I building my life? Right. And with Andrew Huberman's work, good night's sleep starts in the morning, right? Going out and sitting out in the sunshine and letting your body relax a little bit and letting your natural brain processes begin to wake up. It also means that I've got to be really diligent about screens before bedtime, about an hour and a half out. I've been on call for 24 hours a day, 365 days a year for 20 years in my higher ed job. I know how hard that is. So I had to create on-call systems, and I had to have other people answer the phone, and you only call me if there's right. So it went from being woke up every night or every other night to once a week or once every 2 weeks, right? I had to figure out ways to do that. And what that was it was me sacrificing. I need to be at every single thing and flex on that. Every decision's got to come through me. And that means I'm a poor leader. I'm not training up people to be good leaders beneath me or side by side with me, really. And so I had to surrender my Delony rules everything. And I had to make sleep a priority. That meant that I couldn't spend 45 minutes in the shower. That meant that I had to work out in the morning and get up early. That meant I had to change basically my whole life. I had to get off that stuff. I have a pretty solid supplement regimen that I keep to. And man, I tell you what, now I can't, it's past 9:30, man. I can't move my body. I'm out. Right. And it's been a beautiful transition for me.
That's so good, man. And I think you speak in that, opening that part up, you speak to every leader, because I think there's like a gold star we feel like we get, right? There's a gold star for always being on call and always being available. And
that's such a leadership failure.
It is. Absolutely.
It's a leadership. We're communicating to the young leaders that are with us. It's poor communication to the parents and students who we're serving. Like when I was in education, it is a poor steward to our customers to not have boundaries.
Yeah.
And the one or two customers who scream and yell that they couldn't get me at 2 a.m., I honestly don't want them as my customer.
Right.
Because that's going to end up in a train wreck down the road. It's those that say, hey, I don't answer the phone after 10 o'clock because I'm with my family. Very, very few parents in my career have been like, that's ridiculous. As long as they can call security or they can call somebody on camp, right? And that's somebody else's job in that season. But man, it is poor. It's a failure of leadership across the board. I can't believe that college presidents, I can't believe that executive pastors, if you will, put 100% availability as a gold star, because it's a choice to make your leadership team less effective. It's a choice to make the people who work for you and with you make their lives and their family lives more miserable. It's such a ridiculous way to lead.
I totally agree with you. And the sad part is, I think so many leaders, they recognize it for others, but they don't do it for themselves. You know,
and
it's
then
like,
well, I'll protect it on myself.
That's it. That's right. Yes. I got me, you know, and yours was, your training's always to run towards the danger.
Right.
And my unpacking through this book, just to be honest with you, is I just don't want to disappoint anybody. I don't want anybody. I didn't want to disappoint my mom and dad. I don't want to disappoint. Now I've been pastoring a church for 25 years, same church. I don't want to disappoint these people and all the leaders that I work with in our community. And therefore we tell everybody else the right thing. But yet sometimes I think we can find ourselves going, all right, there's some out of order things. You made a comment. It was really good.
Real quick, before we go there, you just touched on something that I think is so critical that we all leaders have to be careful of. And it's a very subtle but powerful identity shift. Because you get into ministry, you get into coaching, you get into these fields to lead people. And leadership requires accountability. It requires hard conversations. It requires getting in people's business. It requires grace and compassion, all those things. And after a while, what happens is we switch. It's a slow switch. Just think of a light switch turning from, I want to lead these people, to, I don't want to disappoint.
That's right.
I want to win this game, to, I don't want to lose this game.
That's right.
And when you make that switch, suddenly you're playing defense, not offense. And you start couching, I need to speak this truth to my church, but I can't say it all the way because I'm going to make some people upset, or these people are going to leave, or they're going to post about it on Facebook, or we need to get this guy in the game, but we spent a ton of money recruiting this one, and he's the guy, and he's got a t-shirt. So let's go ahead. The moment you make that switch, your whole system, you're guaranteeing yourself you're going to disappoint people. 100%. You don't walk back from that, because that's not a sustainable. You can't play defense in win games. Right?
That's right. Well, I appreciate everybody listening.
You have to play defense and win games. You can't only play defense. At some point, you got to shoot, right?
That's exactly right. And I'm just happy that everybody else got to listen into my coaching session with you today. So we're glad we stuck a microphone in the middle of the room. This is like a selfish lesson for me today. You made a statement in the book. You said the stories we tell ourselves are powerful because we hear them in our own voice.
Yeah. I've
never heard anybody say it quite. Everybody has self stories, and we all get that. And especially in the athletic world, man, a kid stepping into the box, man, they're saying something to themselves before they step into that box, or before the quarterback gets under center. He's got something mentally going through his mind. Why hearing our story from ourselves in our own voice? Why does it mean even more to us?
Because we're the smartest person that we know. And you've probably read that research. It's hilarious, right? That 95% of people think they're better than average drivers. And it was the NFL one. It was 97% of NFL players think they're in the top 2 or 3 players on the team in terms of football awareness. And my favorite one was more than 70 or 80 or 90%. It was a high percentage believe they are less biased than other people. Right. So they even got that wrong. Right. So we hear our own voice as truth, because it's really, at the end of the day, all we've got. And we also identify that voice that never shuts up, that just goes. It's always criticizing. What about this? What about that? What about them? Why are they doing that? We think that's us. We think that is our voice, and it's not. It's a part of our brain that is just running and processing. And it was powerful when I realized I can control that. I don't have to let that tape just run 24/7, 365, because it makes me nuts. But it was backing out and looking at, okay, how am I talking to myself? And as a leader, as a coach, especially, I've got 2 different stories that they haunt me, and they came from coaches. One haunts me positively and one haunts me negatively. And teaching kids how to speak to themselves is one of the greatest gifts you can give them. Don't lie to yourself. Take ownership of how you're performing, how you've prepared. But man, be careful about the voices the words you put in kids' head, because your voice, you tell some kid, you suck at this, or you're not going to play for me, or you say something like that, over time, your words become their words in their own voice. I can't do this. I'll never be able to make this. That job's not for me. I can't take that promotion. She's never going to marry me. And it becomes a generational legacy thing that you pass on to your kids and your grandkids. And so it's being hyper aware of that voice in our head, because we trust ourselves.
That's it. And you even hit me. You did such a great job unpacking that in the book. I mean, this is a book every leader's got to put this on their shelf and read it, because you hit it so hard, that it's the guy getting ready to close the deal, and he goes back to, man, you don't ever hit a big shot. And therefore we almost screw up our own lives because of something we've begun to believe is true. Right. I can't.
In high school, my track team had won 9 years in a row, and we were at Kingwood High School, which is a juggernaut track and field. Olympians. It was national champions, state champions. It was the real deal. I was anchoring the mile relay team, and I've never even seen this done up until now. I didn't know this was possible, but I dropped the baton. Me and the third leg fumbled the exchange. I dropped it, and we lost the meet by 1 point. We lost I was in first place, went from first, and it hit the second guy's place, bounced up, hit him in the shin, rolls out to lane 7. Not that I still remember every single moment of this 30 years later, 25 years later, but this haunting story, when it's on the line, Delony, you'll screw it up. And when I looked at my past, when somebody says, hey, I need somebody to get this report done, who will make this presentation, my instinct is to back up. Is to say, like, that's not for me, because I'm going to drop it. I'm going to screw it up. And it wasn't until just recently that I started saying, no, when I was 18 years old, I dropped a baton. That is not the way John Delony does life. Stop telling yourself that story, man. And that was me. I'd take ownership. It happened. I dropped that thing. I've hurt people badly. I have to own that and then say, okay, what am I going to do next? Right? And I've got to stop letting that story just rattle around in my head. And we've got a million of those things, right? We all do.
You did such a great job too, talking about loneliness and friends. And I want to end today. You hear so many leadership phrases, leadership is lonely. It's lonely at the top. All those things you can't trust. I mean, you can't let people too close to you, because they're going to be the ones that hurt you. Keep your enemies closest, but man, you need to keep people at arm's length. Pastors definitely, you need to get in a small group, you need to get in a class, but then pastors isolate themselves because they don't want to expose their heart, expose their family, live in that glass house deal. Talk to me about friends. Talk to me about the importance of people having friends and why that is so critical to changing their future.
It was what we were just talking about earlier about loneliness, and it's a brain thing. It's a body thing, that when your body recognizes it's lonely, it's more damaging than smoking. The chemical cascade that your body kicks into gear when it recognizes, hey, you're all you've got. You're alone out here. Whether you're alone behind a pulpit, you're alone in your executive pastor office, you're alone as on the road going to recruit some other knuckleheaded 17-year-old that who knows what day it is, right? You got to pull him off video game control out of his hand just because he happens to run fast and he can catch a football. That idea of being lonely at the top is, again, what a ridiculous thing we've done to ourselves. Dude, when you go to prison, when you're in prison and you do something dumb there and they want to punish you, there's not a lot they can do because you're already in jail. They put you down in the hole. They isolate you. And there's many psychologists that are calling for, after 13 or 14 days, I forgot the number, that with the World Health Organization to designate it as torture because it psychologically unspools us. And dude, that's how we choose to live our lives.
That's right.
We do it to ourselves. What a bananas way to live. And so and again, dude, I've got friends who love me. Close friends, man, that would go to war with me. They would storm hell with me. but I cut myself off from them. I don't reach out. I get really busy. And instead of saying, hey, I need to go have some nachos and a drink and with some guys and get off my little fancy diet for a night and just go laugh, I don't do that. Or I lead a Bible study and I put it under I'm with people, but I'm not. That whole thing is at arm's length. You know what I mean? When I do that, I am choosing to die young. I am choosing misery. And here's the big one. I'm choosing to ruin the lives of those who love me. Because here's why. 2019, a study came out that I thought was going to be what rattled America. How naive I was, right? And I didn't know this other little thing was coming along in 2020, right? But JAMA, the Journal of American Medical Association, puts out a study that says that for the third year in a row, this isn't a study as much as it's just reading the data. The third year in a row, the average life expectancy of an American citizen had gone down again. And dude, we put too much money in the system. We have it too good, right? We've got, even if you're hungry, you don't hear people starving to death in America, yep. Right? There's a soup kitchen. Like, we have all the basic needs. What's happening? And one great medical voice said they called them diseases of despair, and they're not murders, and they're not, whatever it's on the news. It was addiction, suicide, and organ disease failures, like heart disease, liver disease, strokes. And then he put it another way. He said, we are lonelying ourselves to death. They call it long tail suicide. I'm not pulling a trigger. I'm just putting in another Twinkie and I'm watching another Netflix show. I'm lonelying myself to death. And over time, I just want to be done because I'm tired. I'm just exhausted. And my kids come in and they see dad with his feet propped up on the couch and they know, I probably shouldn't mess with dad. And then they wonder, what is it about that TV show that's more lovable than me? And they set off on their journey forever trying to solve what was more important about work than me. What was more important, that stupid phone that he was always looking at? What was more important than me, his beautiful little daughter? And they will try to solve that for the rest of their lives. They will pass it on to their kids. And so at some point, I have to know the science behind it. I have to go make friends. People that I tell the good stuff to, the bad stuff to, the abuse, there's stuff that happened to me as a kid that I will never write about publicly. I've got to make sure a couple people know that, because grief demands a witness. I got to be able to say that. And then the fourth thing is I got to have people that I do life with, that I have adventures with, that I say yes to things, right? I found myself in the middle of a mosh pit the other night at a Deftones concert. I hadn't been in one of those in 15 years. And I thought, I got to get out of my house and go be with other people. And a buddy's like, I'm going to the show tonight. So I went. And dude, my wife the next morning said, you are glowing, like after a honeymoon glowing. What happened last night? And I was like, we got in a mosh pit and it was incredible. And by the way, I'm going to another show on Tuesday, right? I have to go be with other people, and I've got to do it on the regular. And if they burn me, then, I'm not going to put my hand back in the rattlesnake bag again, but I'm going to go find somebody else. And I have to make that a priority of my life. I have to.
And you hit this a lot with Carrie Newhoff in a great episode you guys did together. It is a benefit to your marriage. When you find those friends, it can benefit your marriage with your spouse. Why is that so?
And parenting.
Yeah, right? Absolutely.
The greatest gift I can give my kids is a picture of what adult friendship looks like. Most of us don't have that. We don't even know what that means. Like, I have pictures in my head of my dad going to help other people in crisis, or to help them, jack up a car in the driveway. I don't have pictures of my head, just because men didn't do that back then.
That's right.
Of 4 or 5 guys coming over just to shoot the crap in the garage. I don't have any pictures of that. So I've got to give that to my kids. So he understands, when I'm an adult, this is what adult looks like, right? And it's not sitting in front of a TV. It's going hunting with a group of guys. It is going to play church league basketball, even though my dad looks ridiculous and embarrasses the family name when he tries to play. It is just having a group of guys that we go out with. And same with my wife. If I know that my brain, as a lonely brain, begins to see threats that aren't there and begins to get more cortisol and more adrenaline and more fight or flight spinning up, I know I'm not a good husband when I'm like that, because nobody makes good choices when they're spun up and angry and frustrated and on edge. And that means I'm not going to be a good husband. And so the greatest gift I can give my wife is once a week to go hang out with a group of guys that we're going to do fun stuff. We're going to do silly stuff. Now, listen, I've heard other guys be like, yeah, bro, we're going. That doesn't mean you go to the bar and have 14 beers and you come home an idiot and you snore all night like a moron. I'm saying you got to have a group of guys that you do stuff with. Maybe it's not every week. Maybe it's every 2 weeks. But that's the greatest gift you can give your marriage. It's the greatest gift you can give your kids, is to be able to be home and be fully present with a brain that's well.
That's so good. So your parents do such a great job when you're little, pouring a faith into you, and they guided you. Your mom points back and says, man, I believe it because I choose to believe it. Yeah. Your dad gives you the grace to go find your own faith. Don't rely on my church or my faith. Go find your own faith. At the end of John's days, your wife, your children, is they look back one day at your faith and your children or your spouse, your beautiful wife's on a podcast with somebody and they're talking about you. What do you want them to say about your faith and how it touched them?
One of my favorite quotes is from the great theologian and songwriter Rich Mullins, who said, we so often over spiritualize Jesus and we turn him into a guy putting around on a cloud scooter, and we lose the humanity. And he goes on to say, I'm really weary of people who say, I do a thing and then I go do my ministry, as though a ministry is separate and apart from who you are as you interact with the world. Ministry is flushing the toilet. Ministry is tipping really, really well, even when the service isn't great. Ministry is saying yes, sir, and no, sir, and being kind. And yesterday my son and I were going for a run together, and our neighbor had another heart attack. And so I stood out there for 15 minutes in the heat and talked to him. And as we started to go running, I looked at my son and said, he's not going to be with us much longer, and I'm going to give him 15 minutes of grace. And my son said, I know, Dad. And so I want less pontification, and I want my kids, especially I want my wife, to have seen that guy lived Jesus. He took the picture that Jesus gave us of a life well lived. He showed up in places where the church got mad at him for showing up. Everybody was welcome at the table. If you voted for Bernie Sanders or for Trump, everybody's welcome at Delony's house. It was a place of hospitality, a place of laughter, a place of weeping and sharing grief together. But we lived it on the little things every day, day by day, over a lifetime.